Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair. This episode is going to be a little bit different. For example, I'm not reviewing a book today. Not a movie or comic book either. Today, I'm going to be looking at an audiobook that has no print counterpart, at least right now. It was designed as an audio-first novella written by John Scalzi, who wrote Red Shirts, a fantastic book that plays with the tropes of Star Trek. The novella, The Dispatcher, is narrated by Zachary Quinto, who you might know as Sylar from Heroes, or, more likely if you're watching my show, Spock from the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. The story follows Tony Valdez, a so-called dispatcher, who is basically a murderer for hire, but there's a catch. He doesn't murder people against their will. See, at some point prior to the start of the novella, people stop dying in the case of murders. Sort of like that Family Guy episode. If you die of natural causes or commit suicide, you still die. But if you're pushed down an elevator shaft or shot, you return to life 999 times out of 1,000. There's a very slim margin of error, but most dispatchers never have that one time happen. Sounds like an interesting premise, huh? Before we start, I do want to warn that there are going to be spoilers, but if you'd like to listen to the book before watching the review, you can, as it's free from Audible until November 2nd, and so you can go get it and listen to it right now. I'll wait. And as I wait, I'm also going to explain that I'm not going to do this the way I'd normally do. I'm experimenting with changing up the format a bit, and also, since it's so readily available, I don't want to just summarize it and give away the ending. So I'm still going to give plot details and such, but I'm not going to give away everything, since you can go listen to it right now. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now and get to the book. The cover, or rather the thumbnail image, is rather basic, but then again, you don't buy audiobooks based on their cover. It's a blurred out man with the title overlaid on him. I don't really have to talk about it, but I figured I'd at least show it because I really love the fonts used on the cover. Anyway, let's get to the story. The story starts with Tony Valdez at a hospital about to perform his job. He and dispatchers like him sit in on surgeries as mandated by the insurance companies for high-risk surgeries, things that most people won't survive, like an old man getting open heart surgery that today wouldn't be attempted because of how likely it is that the patient would die. But it's okay for this guy, since if the surgery goes south, Valdez can axe him and he'll wake up at home as good as new, or as good as he was prior to undergoing the surgery. The head surgeon on the operation isn't happy that Valdez is there, seeing as how he's there to fix her mistakes, if she makes any, which she doesn't plan on and believes that he's unnecessary, but as the insurance companies mandate it, he gets to stay. He sits in, and when the patient does start to fail, he dispatches them by putting a payload into the patient's brain and detonating it, which causes the patient to suddenly disappear into thin air and awake naked at home. Oh yeah, you don't get to take your clothes with you when you come back to life. Better hope you aren't killed while wearing your favorite shirt. It'll be a pain in the ass to get back.
This is my best top, damn it!
He goes to fill out the necessary paperwork and is visited by Detective Langdon in regards to another dispatcher, Jimmy Albert, who Valdez was filling in for, as he had something to attend to and couldn't come into work that day. Langdon tells Valdez that Jimmy is missing, which concerns Valdez. She asks him some questions, how long he knew Jimmy, if they were good friends, etc. She also asks about the job of being a dispatcher, asking about the logistics of it. She also asks him about private gigs, where a dispatcher would work directly for a client, which are sometimes on the edge of the gray area of legality, and Valdez suggests Jimmy's wife might know. While they sit there, there's an accident, and Langdon gets to see up close and personal how Valdez does his job. Langdon asks him to be a consultant on the case and wants him to come with her to see Jimmy's wife, but Valdez doesn't think that would be a good idea. She forces him to come, and we discover why he didn't like the idea. Katie, Jimmy's wife, hates Valdez since he had led Jimmy to getting some less-than-savory private clients. See, Valdez invited Jimmy onto a bowling team, and after a while, one of the members began offering up private contracts from the not-so-legal side of the street, and Katie disapproved and made Jimmy stop, but she still blamed Valdez for getting him involved in the first place, and even tells Valdez that she'd murder him given the chance in front of Langdon. Since he'd just come back to life, it's not really a big deal, but she really doesn't like him. We'll be right back with more of the show. This is Maverick reporting in. We're back. Langdon asks Valdez about the less-than-savory private clients, and he tells her that most of the private clients are for stuff like skydiving with rich people to make sure they won't die if their parachute won't open. But some of them are a little less savory, like underground fight clubs where everyone beats each other senseless, and then Valdez would hypothetically dispatch all of them so their injuries wouldn't cripple them. The next visit they make is to go to the friend handing out the private gigs, Mason Schilling. Mason was busy dispatching a couple of college students having a duel with longswords, and tells Valdez that while he can't tell him anything about Jimmy's private clients, he can give him the name of someone who might have something to do with the private client. Orville Woolridge. Valdez and Langdon look into him and find out that he's the CEO of a private investment firm. Basically the bad guy from every episode of Elementary. His wife recently died of cancer, so Valdez can infer that Jimmy was on hand for experimental treatments. If they made her decline faster, he could dispatch her and she'd end up back how she was before the treatment started. She'd still be dying, but they could keep looking for some sort of cure. They go to Woolridge, but he's not that much help, still in mourning for his wife, and so he doesn't say much, aside from asking Valdez how likely it was that a dispatcher could fail to dispatch someone twice in a row. That gives them what Jimmy was doing around the time he went missing, but it still doesn't explain what happened to him. Langdon theorizes that it might have something to do with a former crime family, the Tunnies, who have over the years gone legitimate, since being murdered has become a minor setback, and who happen to operate the security firm that works for Woolridge. And that's where I'm going to stop. I've given you enough summary to explain the basic premise, and any further and I risk giving away the ending. Who kidnapped Jimmy Albert? Was it the Tunnies, Woolridge, or will it turn out to be Valdez all along? Don't worry, I wouldn't be giving it a favorable review if that was the ending. You'll have to give it a listen and find out, but I have to say I love this story. I mean, I went into it pretty confident, since with it being written by John Scalzi and performed by Zachary Quinto, I had high hopes, and it just blew me away. Not only is it a good story in general, it's an experience. Something I hope that you guys take away from it as well. I love this story. It's definitely one of my top 5 favorite audiobooks, and if it was a print book, it would be in my top 10 favorite books, period. The story is just so compelling. The characters, even though they're all obviously voiced by the same guy, feel so unique and different from each other that it's like listening to a Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama with a full cast, except there's not a full cast. It's one guy. Plus, where else are you going to hear Zachary Quinto get sassy with himself? I highly recommend this audiobook, and since it's free until November 2nd, you don't really have an excuse not to go pick it up. I did, and I don't regret it one bit. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of the Literary Lair, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet. And maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. See you next time. The story follows Tony Valdez, a so-called dispatcher, who is basically a murder for hire.